Hello, this is a demo on accounting. So I will talk about basic accounting equation, and then I'll talk about debit and credit. So the basic accounting equation states asset is hola, equal to liability. Let me put singular. Liability plus equity. Or A is equal to L plus E. So what is an asset? Let me put it down here. Asset is something that you have, something that will bring you benefits in the future. A house, a car, shoes. Yeah, I will include shoes, knowledge, superpower. Yeah, I'm thinking it too in the science fiction now. Okay, so anything that brings you a benefit either now or in the future, and the future could be in the next minute. Money, cash is also an asset. It you you definitely get benefits out of having that. Okay, and when they say benefits in the future, it doesn't have to be, oh, it's in 1 year. No, that could be in 1 hour, in whatever time you want that benefit, you can get it using that asset. So that's an asset. Is what The way I say it, asset is what you have. Liability is a debt. It's something that you owe. OWE. Have. Liability is something that you owe. Equity, something that you own. So at 10 a.m., you have $20 in your wallet. You want to buy a phone. Okay, you are selling stuff. You're a salesperson, and the phone helps you contact clients. So the phone you use. So you want to buy a phone. You want to buy a phone that costs $100. Definitely you're missing cash. At 1 p.m., you go to the bank and borrow $80 to buy that phone. At 2 p.m., you purchase the phone. You purchase and pay for the phone. Now let me write in red. At 10 a.m., when you get up in the morning, you have $20 in your wallet. Your asset is the cash. A is equal to $20. That's an asset. At 1 p.m., you go to the bank and you borrow $80. You write asset. Liability equal $80. That's the amount of money you borrowed. You owe that money to the bank. Now comes the interesting part. At 2 p.m., you purchase and you pay for that phone. You no longer have cash in your wallet as an asset. Now your asset is a phone worth $100 equals $100 for the phone. Oh, I skipped one more thing I wanted to say about at 1 p.m. At 1 p.m., when you borrow $80, you have a liability of $80. At the same time, the cash that you have is no longer 20, it's 100. When you borrowed that money, your asset went up. Out of that asset of $100, $80 was what you borrowed. And what was yours was 80. At 2 p.m., the asset is no longer money. $100, that was cash. That was cash. Let me make it smaller so it could fit everything in one screen. Okay, better. When you have that phone, now you have the phone in your hands, the asset that you have is the phone. You still have that liability of $80 and the equity of $20. So that's the difference between asset, equity, and liability. So we covered the basic accounting equation. Let's now move to debit and credit. Debit and credit alone means nothing, only left or right. It must be accompanied with a different word to have meaning. Debiting an asset, debiting a liability. That's when you give it meaning. Debit by itself does not mean more. Credit by itself does not mean less, or vice versa. Debit does not mean increase by itself. Credit does not mean decrease by itself. Nor does credit mean increase by itself. Do not think of credit like a credit card. Do not think of debit like your ATM card. Okay? Debit, that word must be used together with a type of account. When it comes to asset, the positive balance for an asset is debit. Debit is to the left. The positive balance, A is equal to L plus E. Positive balance of an asset, an increase in asset would be a debit. An increase in asset would be a debit. That's why they say the normal balance or the positive balance for asset is debit. What do I use to remember that? What do I tell myself? I say, okay, in that equation, asset is equal to liability plus equity. Asset is to the left, liability and equity is to the right. Normal balance or positive balance for asset is debit. Normal balance or positive balance for liability and equity is credit. However, whatever acronym, whatever you use to help you memorize, and I don't use that word lightly because I don't really like saying to memorize. In that particular case, yes, you do. You must remember what is the positive balance for asset and what is the positive balance for liability and equity. So if a positive balance in asset or if an increase in asset is a debit, then a decrease in asset would be a credit. The same way, if a positive balance in equity is a credit, a negative balance in equity would be a debit. Oh, and I didn't say, okay, let me go back to something else. Liability and asset are straightforward. As I'm doing the recording, as some terms or examples come to mind, I'll just say them. Because the purpose is to help you understand, to make it easier for you to read an accounting problem and solve the accounting problem, and to help you study and identify what is an asset, what is a liability, and what is equity. Asset, straightforward. Liability, straightforward. You owe money, you have money. You owe money, that's a liability. You have, that's an asset. Equity is the complex one. It has 4 different elements in it. Equity has dividend, expense. Let me put a bar because I want to separate. And it has revenue, and capital. Asset and liability, they are straightforward. Equity is more complex. Equity is composed of dividend, expense, revenue, and capital. And you see how I separated dividend and expense on one side, revenue, capital on the other side? Because they both have different effect on equity. Equity is the owner's interest in what they have. When you had that phone in your hands, that's what you have. The phone was your asset. Your interest in that phone was only $20 because that was what you own. The $80 were not yours. You borrowed that money. Dividend and expense, when they increase, they decrease equity. Revenue and capital, when they increase, they also increase equity. If you have $20 in your pocket and you have an expense, you pay for that, definitely you'll have less money. So as expense goes up, equity goes down. As revenue go up, when it goes up, revenue goes up, equity also goes up. The positive balance for revenue and capital